an attack on God's plan for salvation. Only God's plan for salvation will work, will work. Holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Only God's plan for salvation will work, and holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Forgiveness Willie, teaching forgiveness from the Ozarks. Here it's for lesson 86, which is for Thursday, March the 27th of 2025. It's actually the Monday preceding that for me. And we're reading from the Foundation for Inner Peace version of A Course in Miracles this year. Lesson 87 says, our review today will cover these. That's 87, excuse me. These ideas are for review today. Only God's plan for salvation will work. That's lesson 71. And 72, holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Remember yesterday, what do we want to attack for? Knowing it makes us go unconscious. Makes us not know what we want and who we are. Only God's plan for salvation will work. It is senseless for me to search wildly about for salvation. I have seen it in many people and in many things, but when I reached for it, it was not there. I was mistaken about where it is. I thought it was outside of me. I thought it'd be from getting something new or having a new, whether it's a relationship or whatever it is. Something you thought that something was going to bring you something outside yourself. And I was mistaken about where it is. I was mistaken about what it is. I will undertake no more idle seeking. Only God's plan for salvation will work. And I will rejoice because His plan can never fail. Can always find peace inside, joy, happiness inside. His plan will never fail. These are some suggested forms for applying this idea specifically. If you're tempted or something today, you can tell yourself, only God's plan for salvation will work. Or you could use it more specifically by saying, God's plan for salvation will save me from my perception of this. Or you might say, this is no exception in God's plan for my salvation. No matter what it is. Wow, something what you might have called terrible happens to you or grievous. And instead you say, this is no exception in God's plan for my salvation. Or let me perceive this only in the light of God's plan for salvation. We'll include those in our song if we have time at the end. Holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Holding grievances is an attempt to prove that God's plan for salvation will not work. Have you ever considered you're actually trying to prove to yourself? We may be under the level of consciousness at this point, but that's what we're trying to become aware of again. And He's giving you a heads up. Holding grievances is an attempt to prove that God's plan for salvation will not work. Yet only His plan will work. By holding grievances, I am therefore excluding my only hope of salvation from my awareness. Wow, if you really knew you were doing that, you'd quit doing it, wouldn't you? By holding grievances, I am therefore excluding my only hope of salvation from my awareness. I would no longer defeat my own best interests in this insane way. I would accept God's plan for salvation and be happy. God's will for me is perfect happiness, remember? Specific applications for this idea might be in these forms. I'm choosing between misperceptions and salvation as I look on this. If I see grounds for grievances in this, I will not see the grounds for my salvation. This calls for salvation, not attack. I need to be saved from my perception of this, rather than attacking it or distancing myself from it, which is really the same thing. You're just not seeing God in everyone, in everything, actually. Okay, let's go back and look at our text reading, and we'll come back and take another look at that before we close. And we are in chapter 10, the idols of sickness. We're in Roman numeral 5, the denial of God. And we made it to paragraph 8, but let's start in paragraph 7 and read the rest of this. And this will finish the chapter. Your Father has not denied you. He does not retaliate, but He does call to you to return. When you think He has not answered your call, you have not answered His. He calls to you from every part of the sonship because His love for His Son. Because of His love for His Son, He calls you. He loves you so much, He calls you from every one of your brothers and sisters. If you hear His message, He has answered you, and you will learn of Him if you hear right. Are you really hearing God, the voice for joy? The love of God is in everything He created, for His Son is everywhere. Look with peace upon your brothers, and God will come rushing into your heart in gratitude for your gift to Him. Paragraph 8. Let's have God come rushing into our hearts because we've looked with peace upon our brothers, and God has come rushing into our hearts in gratitude for giving our brother the gift of peace. Isn't that something? So God wants us to give our brothers the gift of peace. Won't the world be beautiful when we do that? And it's about time we learn to do that now, don't you think? Don't you think there's enough catastrophes in the world that we can say, okay, I think there's a better way? And have enough motive to talk about it, and enough motive to the listeners to go, I think, you may have the answer here. A universal experience where we all realize that we're all one with each other. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to speed up the day where it's all understood that God is in everyone and that we owe each other honor, gratitude, peace. Paragraph 8. Do not look to the God of sickness for healing, but only to the God of love. For healing is the acknowledgement of Him. When you acknowledge Him, you will know that He has never ceased to acknowledge you, and that in His acknowledgement of you lies your being. You are not sick and cannot die. You are not sick no matter how much you think you're sick. You are not sick and you cannot die. But you can confuse yourself with things that do. Remember, though, that to do this is blasphemy, for it means that you're looking without love on God and His creation, for which He cannot be separated. 9. Only the eternal can be loved, for love does not die. What is of God is His forever, and you are of God. Would He allow Himself to suffer? And would He offer His Son anything that is not acceptable to Him? If you will accept yourself as God created you, you will be incapable of suffering. Yet to do this, you must acknowledge Him as your Creator. This is not because you will be punished otherwise. It is merely because your acknowledgement of your Father is the acknowledgement of yourself as you are. Your Father created you wholly without sin, wholly without pain, and wholly without suffering of any kind. If you deny Him, you bring sin, pain, and suffering into your own mind because of the power He gave it. Your mind is capable of creating worlds, but it can also deny what it creates because it is free. 10. You do not realize how much you have denied yourself and how much God in His love would not have it so. Yet He would not interfere with you because He would not know His Son if He were not free. To interfere with you would be to attack Himself, and God is not insane. To interfere with you would be to attack Himself, and God is not insane. When you deny Him, you are insane. Would you have Him share your insanity? God will never cease to love His Son, and His Son will never cease to love Him. That was the condition of His Son's creation, fixed forever in the mind of God. To know that is sanity. To deny it is insanity. God gave Himself to you in your creation, and His gifts are eternal. Would you deny yourself to Him? In other words, your health and your invulnerability, you are not sick and you cannot die, is a present state. It's going on right now, and it always will be going on. Enter into it. Okay, where are we at? Are we to deny? Okay, God gave Himself to you in your creation, and His gifts are eternal. Would you deny yourself to Him? Okay, now paragraph 11. Out of your gifts to Him, the kingdom will be restored to His Son. His Son removed Himself from His gift by refusing to accept what had been created for Him and what He had created in the name of His Father. Heaven waits for His return, for it was created as the dwelling place of God's Son. You are not at home anywhere else or in any other condition. Do not deny yourself the joy that was created for you, for the misery you have made for yourself. Do not deny yourself the joy that was created for you, for the misery you have made for yourself. Deny your joy in order to keep the misery you've made for yourself. God has given you the means for undoing what you have made. Listen, and you will learn how to remember what you are. Listen. That's why we want to take these quiet times and do our listening, hopefully for, 10 or 12 minutes today in your 15-minute practice time. I do a couple of them every day, but He's not requiring that. Couple longer practice periods. I generally do one in the evening also, but He's only requiring you to do one at this point. But do listen. Spend most of that time listening. Of course, He does want you to read a little bit out of that, a little reading meditation. Paragraph 12. If God knows His children as wholly sinless, it is blasphemous to perceive them as guilty. If God knows His children as wholly without pain, it is blasphemous to perceive suffering anywhere. If God knows His children to be wholly joyous, it is blasphemous to feel depressed. All these illusions and the many other forms that blasphemy may take are refusals to accept creation as it is. If God created His Son perfect, that is how you must learn to see Him, to learn of His reality. And as part of the sonship, that is how you must see yourself, to learn of yours. There is so much in that paragraph. Let's read it once again. 12. If God knows His children as wholly sinless, it is blasphemous to perceive them as guilty. If God knows His children as wholly without pain, it is blasphemous to perceive suffering anywhere. If God knows His children to be wholly joyous, it is blasphemous to feel depressed. Whoa! I'm feeling a little depressed today. Well, hold it now. That's blasphemy, he says. That's like going against your own well-being. That's insane. find your joy. Take that time of quiet and peace and say, God, deliver me from this perception myself where I feel depressed or blah or upset or discouraged or whatever the negative emotion is. If God knows his children to be wholly joyous, it is blasphemous to feel depressed. All of these illusions and the many other forms that blasphemy may take are refusals to accept creation as it is. If God created his Son perfect, that is how you must learn to see him, to learn of his reality. And as part of the sonship, that is how you must see yourself, to learn of your reality. You see yourself as joyful, not depressed, as whole, as healed, rather than as sick. And certainly don't see anyone as guilty, nor yourself. Do not perceive anything God did not create, or you are denying him. Paragraph 13. Do not perceive anything God did not create, or you are denying him. His is the only fatherhood, and it is yours only because he has given it to you. Your gifts to yourself are meaningless, but your gifts to your creations are like his, because they are given in his name. That is why your creations are as real as his. Yet the real fatherhood must be acknowledged if the real son is to be known. You believe that the sick things you have made are your real creations, because you believe that the sick images you perceive are the sons of God. Only if you accept the fatherhood of God will you have anything, because his fatherhood gave you everything. I said that wrong. I think I said that wrong last year too. I didn't use the word fatherhood. Only if you accept the fatherhood of God will you have anything, because his fatherhood gave you everything. That is why to deny him is to deny yourself. Wow. So, only if you accept the fatherhood of God, God made you, and you're made in his image. Now go forth and love like he does. God created me holy. God created me holy, and therefore I'm holy. God created me kind, therefore kindness resides in me. All the qualities of good, God created me good, therefore goodness is in me. Remember that lesson where we had something to that degree? Or like that? And then our last paragraph, 14. Arrogance is the denial of love. Arrogance is the denial of love, because love shares and arrogance withholds. As long as both appear to you to be desirable, the concept of choice, which is not of God, will remain with you. As long as both appear to you to be desirable. Arrogance and love. Arrogance is the denial of love, because love shares and arrogance withholds. Okay? So as long as you see a reason to withhold and not love, be arrogant, you're going to have need for choice, he says. As long as both appear to you to be desirable, to love somebody and to withhold from somebody, as long as both appear to you to be desirable, the concept of choice, which is not of God, will remain with you. While this is not true in eternity, it is true in time, so that while time lasts in your mind, there will be choices. Time itself is your choice. Time itself is your choice. If you would remember eternity, you must look only on the eternal. If you allow yourself to become preoccupied with the temporal, you're living in time. As always, your choice is determined by what you value. Time and eternity cannot both be real, because they contradict each other. If you will accept only what is timeless as real, you will begin to understand eternity and make it yours. Wow. Okay. Our lesson today, which you're supposed to be telling yourself throughout the earlier part of the day, only God's plan for salvation will work. And then throughout the latter part of the day, holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. So be sure to do that. Let's see what's going on around the world today. Ramadan continues, and it's actually the 10th. It'd be 10 more days to Ramadan, and it's called the 10th night, or the night of power. It's in Ramadan. Tonight would be the night of power. And it's when Muhammad got the first verses of the Quran, was on this particular time. So, assalamu alaikum. Blessed. Okay, so so Muhammad, blessed be his name, received the Quran on this day. At least the first verses of it. Imagine it was several, like Course of Miracles took like 7 years to get it brought through. Lent continues for the Christian people. World Theater Day, out of holidays and observances, I found a few others. Celebrate Exchange Day, Whiskey Day, Medical Science Liaison Awareness and Appreciation Day, Scribble Day, Spanish Paella Day, which is, the thing that the two essential ingredients is, I think, for Spanish rice is you can add vegetables and meats as you want. But the two things you always want to have in it, as I understand, is olives or olive oil and saffron. Makes it that golden yellow color. We need to learn about growing saffron. And let's see what else today. Viagra Day. Let's see. Nobel Spinach out of Seed Savers Exchange. Let's take a look at that. Nobel. It's a Spinacia oleracea. In a 1933 All-American Selections winner, originally introduced in 1926 by Zwijn and van der Molen of the Netherlands, slow to bolt variety with large leaves that are tender and tasty, good choice for canning or freezing, 50 to 55 day. 2,500 seeds to the ounce. Okay, and you know what? I was just thinking in my meditation, this little phrase came to me yesterday. And I thought, you know what? If anybody asked me what I think would be the most important thing that everybody could do right now in the world, I'd say go home, grow a garden, and share your abundance. That's what Oh Forgiveness Willie says would take care of a whole lot of the problems. And study Course in Miracles, of course, or some other sacred text that's in harmony with where you're at. Okay, spend time listening to God. We've got enough time to sing through our song, I think. And our word for peace is from our Hawaiian brothers and sisters, that at contact with the West in 1778, there was one Polynesian-based culture there. The Hawaiian, even though there's many islands. And their word for peace and joy and happiness is Aloha. Only God's plan for salvation will work. God's plan for salvation will save me from my perception of this. Another thing you can say if you're tempted is, this is no exception. in God's plan for my salvation, my salvation. Or let me perceive this only in the light of God's plan for salvation. Only God's plan for salvation will work. And then in the afternoon, tell yourself, holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. And if tempted, tell yourself, I am choosing between misperceptions and salvation as I look on this. Or you might say, if I see grounds for grievances in this, I will not see the grounds for my salvation. Or you could say, this calls for salvation, not attack, not attack. Holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Only God's plan for salvation will work, Holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Okay, well, thank you again for joining me today, and do the best you can at your longer 15-minute time of listening to God and telling yourself all morning only God's plan for salvation will work. In the latter part of the day, telling yourself holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Aloha!